What is up, guys? Coach Squires here. Today we're going to be talking about the hidden key to maximizing strength and power as an athlete. All right, so one of the big key things here that we're going to be talking about today as we're going through this, I'm sure some of these words you've seen before, is we're going to be talking about what's called the stretch shortening cycle. Okay, now this is a muscle and tendon action that happens through locomotion and through basically all movements in life. But as an athlete, we have to train this a specific way if we really want to become strong, powerful, and explosive, okay? So a lot of you might understand this as like you have that feeling like you're kind of stuck in the mud, right? Where we talk about people that you need to unhitch that trailer, right? They just can't reach that second gear. And often it's because they just don't have a really good stretch shortening cycle, right? Because a lot of our training, as you'll see with these athletes, it's all focused around heavy lifting and banging weight. And while that's great from a strength and stability standpoint, from an athletic performance standpoint, we're missing that key component to really be powerful and explosive. And this comes from more higher velocity based training like plyometrics and things like that, or even lighter lifting, say with like jump squats, where we're transferring from that eccentric contraction to that concentric contraction, right? Okay, so the first phase of the stretch shortening cycle that we actually can work on is our eccentric contraction phase, okay? Now, this is also can be considered deceleration. All right, so one point I want to make with this before we move forward with any of this is the word force absorption gets thrown around quite a bit. And in reality, we don't ever absorb force. We utilize force, right? Okay, so whenever we're doing things for deceleration work, we're teaching our body to manage force, right? We're not teaching our body to absorb anything, okay? So maybe that might make the switch of what's really happening here. So another thing too, when we are working the eccentric phase or deceleration, so the lengthening of that muscle, when we're working these things like altitude jumps, depth jumps, even squat jumps with the bar, we have to work at higher velocity based training modalities, because again, as an athlete, everything we do on the field of play is fast and is powerful, okay? So if we don't train that way, we're not gonna get the adaptations we need to do that. So while it always is good to bang weight, it's also good to take weight off and try to move super fast and do these things here, okay? So when we're talking about the stretch shortening cycle, we have three different phases we go through. As I mentioned, the eccentric contraction, so that's that muscle lengthening. So like as I'm going down into a jump, eccentric loading is happening and contractions are happening. There's lengthening and tension being created, okay? So once that is created, it is then transferred from an eccentric contraction to a concentric contraction through what we call the amortization phase, okay? This is a quick split second reaction where we go from that tension point and then we use that tension to contract the muscles as we would say with like a counter movement, like a jump or something like that, right? Okay. So that's why it's really key here that we get good at high velocity scenarios, because then we can't make this transition very well, and then we're gonna see it here when we get through that concentric, and that kind of creates that stuck in the mud feeling, right? Okay, so another way we think about this, what's happening during this amortization phase and basically throughout this whole stretch shortening cycle, is we have this series elastic component, okay? Now this is specific to just the tendon action that's happening, okay? This is where you get that power and explosiveness, because what happens is the muscle is lengthening, right? And then as that muscle gets to that tension point, it now pulls on the tendon a little bit. Tendons and ligaments are very strong tissues, and which actually helps us to get that extra bit. When you see guys kind of float in the air, or guys that are sprinting very fast, they have a really strong series elastic component. So they utilize their tendons super well. And as I was mentioning earlier, when we have a slow deceleration, it's hard to get the biggest benefit out of this right here, okay? Because we need something that really pulls on the tendons, because like I said, our tendons are super strong, and they're honestly our superpower as athletes. And if we're not training these correctly with plyometrics, then it's gonna be really difficult to take advantage of this, okay? So things that we like to use, as I mentioned, we'll start with altitude jumps, so you just get good at managing force into the ground. You'll see this in our strength and power program. You'll see this within our bomb squad program, okay? And then we start utilizing like depth jumps or any type of counter movement where we go from a skater to a broad out or something, because what we're really trying to work and improve on is that series elastic component, so that you're utilizing the tendons and not just the muscular actions that are happening, okay? You'll know the guys that are using mainly muscle, which is usually the bigger guys, because they got to move a lot more load, a lot more force has to be created, right? So it's usually, they have to do a little extra work to really take advantage of this, but when they do, it's scary, right? So even you big men, this is something you really want to get good at, because that's going to be the key component to you being powerful and explosive, right? So as we go through this eccentric contraction, we get this split second switch from eccentric contraction to a concentric contraction, okay? And as a lot of us know, we all get this. It's from our squats. So like you'll see us, we'll use Anderson squats a lot of times where it'll just focus purely on the concentric force. There's other things we like to throw in there, which are called rocker box jumps within our programs, so that we're all focusing just on that concentric contraction. Another thing you'll see within our programs and just other programs in general is you'll see things with trap bars and deadlifts, right? Because they're really focusing on this right here. But again, if we really want to improve this whole thing, we need to work on the complete series. So going from that eccentric, transferring over to that concentric contraction, okay? Now this is a big focus of everything we do within our programs, and it should be a big focus of everything you do within your program, because the reality is you'll never be a powerful and explosive athlete without these things. Another great benefit to working on things like this is you're actually going to improve your mobility, okay? Because again, mobility is all about the range of motion of your joints, but under loading. And loading can be force, so it can be from like physical force like weights and lifting, but it also can be from running, jumping, and cutting, okay? So trickling all these different modalities and methods within your training is key, and is why we do all this to ensure that you're taking full advantage of these things. And what you'll start to realize as you start implementing more things like plyometrics, which you'll find trickled throughout all of our programs, whether it's the beginning or end, is that we're really trying to improve, like I told you, is this hidden key right here, is that series elastic component, so that you get that little extra, almost like spring-like action basically, that we have. You can utilize that stored energy that we create from the movements themselves. So athletes, if you're not taking advantage of the things I talked about within this video when it comes to the stretch shortening cycle and the series elastic component, you have that feeling of being stuck in the mud and you need to unhitch that trailer, you need to go check out our strength and power program, and even our bomb squat program for our rotational athletes, so that you don't experience these things anymore and you're not limited to your power and explosiveness and what you do on the field of play, okay? So go ahead and check out our Elite Athlete Project, where you can find all these programs for a low price. Hit the link below and I will see you on the other side.